Concrete barriers, anti-vehicle trenches, and fortified guard towers. This was the Berlin Wall, a 96-mile military installation engineered to be unbreachable by physical force. For 28 years, this architecture dictated exactly who could move where in a divided Germany. If a citizen attempted to cross without authorization, the state was prepared to kill them. And over the course of nearly 3 decades, guards shot and killed at least 140 people attempting the journey. On November 9, 1989, the mundane, paper-pushing reality of the East German government triggered the end of this division. The wall was finally undermined by the same bureaucratic system that created it. The wall's physical strength was only as reliable as the bureaucratic orders behind it. A single failure in that communication chain would leave the entire military apparatus paralyzed. This is Günter Schabowski, the spokesman for the East German Politburo. He had just returned from 10 days of vacation. While he was away, the ruling party engaged in complex discussions about loosening travel restrictions, but Schabowski missed all of it. Late that afternoon, as he was walking to the briefing room for a routine press conference, a colleague handed him a single sheet of paper. The document detailed a new policy. East Germans would soon be allowed to apply for exit visas. The Politburo intended for this to take effect the following morning, giving them time to brief the armed guards stationed at the border checkpoints. Nobody explained that timeline to Schabowski. He took the note, folded it, and walked into a room filled with international journalists and live microphones, holding instructions he had never actually read. The press conference was mostly a reading of dry, bureaucratic agenda items. Then, near the end of the session, an Italian journalist asked a specific question about the new travel regulations. Schabowski reached into his pocket, unfolded the paper, and began scanning the text live on camera, trying to find an answer. This graphic shows the typed policy memo. Look closely at the German text to see the critical error. The effective date field was left blank. Without a date, Schabowski improvised. A reporter asked when it took effect. Looking down, Schabowski answered, "Immediately, without delay." In 4 words, a missing keystroke bypassed the East German military protocol, converting an orderly policy rollout into a sudden, uncontrollable mandate. The press conference was broadcasting live. Within minutes, West German television networks picked up the feed, transmitting it back across the border. As the news anchors reported the event, they stripped away the confusion of the press room. They presented Schabowski's off-the-cuff answer as verified fact. East Germany was opening its borders. People in their East Berlin apartments watched these broadcasts and took the television at its word. They interpreted the televised announcement as explicit legal permission to leave immediately. Windows lit up, front doors opened, and residents poured into the streets. They began walking toward the border checkpoints, coalescing into a massive wave of people moving in the same direction. As they marched, they carried an absolute certainty about their rights. Waiting for them at the physical border were guards whose radios remained silent. The military had received no updates, no memos, and no orders to stand down. A legal right that technically did not exist until the next morning was willed into existence right then and there, driven entirely by the actions of thousands of citizens acting on a televised error. At the Bornholmer Strasse checkpoint, the situation rapidly escalated. Thousands of East Berliners pressed against the barrier, demanding to cross. Inside the guard post, the duty officer, Harald Jaeger, frantically dialed his superiors. The chain of command was paralyzed. His commanders had no instructions and offered no backup. Jaeger looked out at the swelling, peaceful crowd. To enforce the existing border protocol, he would have to order his men to open fire and initiate a massacre. To avoid violence, he would have to defy the state and open the gate himself. The misread text in the press room had effectively stripped the military of its authority, forcing a mid-level officer working a night shift to make a decision that would dictate the future of Europe. At 11:17 p.m., Jaeger made his choice. He ordered his men to raise the barrier. The moment Bornholmer Strasse yielded, the tension broke. Word spread rapidly along the border, and within minutes, the remaining crossings across the divided city buckled under the exact same civilian pressure. East Berliners walked freely into West Berlin for the first time in nearly 3 decades. Crowds scaled the concrete, brought out hammers, and began physically tearing down the death strip. If you visit the historical archives today, you can still find the original Politburo memo. The blank space for the date remains exactly as it was that afternoon. The most imposing physical symbol of the Cold War was defeated by a gap in a sentence. An authoritarian regime, built on total control, ultimately proved fatally vulnerable to its own incomplete paperwork.